Hello and welcome to this week's Struggle to Success. Firstly, allow me to apologise for our late start. There's a mad amount of traffic out there due to lockdown. We want to welcome you to Struggle to Success this week. This week's topic is about resilience within rejection. And our guests today are George, who's a football coach, Amy, who's my cousin, and Louise, who is a life coach. And we have got some interesting life stories about how our guests have had to manage and deal with being rejected. Manu, did you want to recap from last week?
Yeah, it's going to be an exciting show. Good evening, everyone. My name's Marlon Morris, and I'm one of the hosts for this evening. As Disha said, the traffic's been horrendous, so I apologise for the late start. But I'm excited about today's subject. Last week we covered from the relationships. We covered relationships last week, and the week before that was prison to purpose. This week we're going to talk about rejection and the resilience in rejection. All these things do affect our health and our mental state of mind, but we're looking at this platform for inspiration, education, and information to take away so we can cope through these perilous times. So I'm excited about it today, and I'll pass on to you now.
Yeah. So this week's topic, resilience within rejection, has come about since hearing about the young boy Jeremy Whiston, who committed suicide after being released from Manchester City. And after hearing that, it resonated with me, having a young boy who also plays football. It really kind of stirred up some emotions within me to question, how do we get to understand to be resilient when, times are really, really difficult for us. And someone, personally, I've been through a lot of situations where I've been rejected and where things have got really, really tough in my life. It would be interesting to understand where my resilience has been birthed from. And this was the reason why I brought these guests on today, because each of their stories and each of their involvements with young people, with people in general, they have a lot of stories that they can offer, and maybe we can try and thrash out where we learn to be resilient from. The first guest that I'd like to bring on today is George. George is my son's football coach, and with the news of Jeremy Whiston, I thought it very paramount that we understand from a coach, a football coach, who has, these young boys in his hands from such a young age to when they get to men, actually, to understand from George how he plays a role within their lives to teach them how to be resilient in rejection. And George, I'd like to hand over to you, and maybe you can explain to some of the viewers what you teach the young boys, or how to be resilient within rejection.
First of all, thanks for having me. I try and use our football program as life lessons for the boys, and we got girls as well. How I do it is it's just little things. So, for example, Odisha, you would know this. If the boys get tackled, it seems like it's a really bad tackle. I give the boys a few seconds to try and get themselves up by themselves, instead of me as the coach just running onto the pitch and picking them up, because they might not know it, but it's also building the resilience in them. So as a life skill, everyone gets knocked down, but if there's no one there to help you up, you still got yourself. So we use that in a football term. So there's a lot of stuff that we might say a phrase to the kids like, are you hurt or are you injured? So the kids know the difference. They know if they're hurt, they got a little kick, but give them 30 seconds, 15 seconds, they'll get themselves up and carry on, dust themselves off and carry on. Now, if they're injured, then obviously you have to go out there, get them off the pitch and let them recover a bit longer. But a lot of the times, the boys now realize, because we've been implementing something like that, which is a small example, they now understand what it means to be hurt and what it means to be injured. So for them, when they finish playing football or they go into the classroom or whatever they want to do with their life, they're going to hit the floor sometimes. They're going to have knockbacks, but they understand that they're hurt. They're going to dust themselves off and keep going. So that's how we build the resilience within our boys, even from a real young age. So we just get them to kind of get them up off the floor and stuff like that, and just show them just a bit of life lessons. Because a lot of the young boys don't understand it, because to them they just got kicked and they're on the floor and they've got a little hurt on their foot and stuff like that, but they don't understand what they're actually learning. But if we instill in that in the boys from young, by the time they get to a teenager, they will understand, about resilience and just relying on themselves to bounce back and just coming up with those type of things.
Mm-hmm. So George, you've said, like, if they fall down, you'll give them their own time to get back up.
Yeah.
Also, every week, my son goes to training, and depending on how he performs in that Thursday training, well, depending on how all of the boys perform in that Thursday training, you then select the team. So, going back to Jeremy Wisdom, where he's been released, how are you expecting the boys to behave or to interpret the rejection if they don't get into the team on
the first thing is it's different for different age groups. So for example, Jose, which is your son, he's under 9s. Then we have under 12 squad. So obviously the boys at 12 years old, they might understand it a bit better than the younger ones. So the younger ones, I kind of just have to break it down to them a lot. And you also use, the biggest example I use for boys is school. So I tell the boys, in school, if you have a test, the teacher gives you a test, everybody has to do the test, but does everyone get the same marks? No, they don't. So if the teacher said, well, you got 10 out of 20 and your friend got 17 out of 20, what do you have to do? You have to work harder. You can't moan at the teacher and say, well, how come I didn't get the same result as my friend did? Maybe your friend might be better at that subject, or they might have worked harder. They might have revised a bit harder than you and stuff like that. So we kind of just teach the boys in terms of examples where they can use in other areas as well. So it's just not, you don't get selected because you had a rubbish training session, or you don't get selected because of this. They might actually had a good training session, but guess what? The person next to them might have had a better training session than them. So we use it as motivation for the boys to, life is about competition. And if we instill that in the boys early, they're just going to get used to it. So no matter where they go in life, they're just going to be used to competition and they're going to thrive off it, instead of seeing it as a detriment, or seeing it as if that person's getting that, then I should be getting that. No, it's competition, it's life, So we try and teach that, using football as a vehicle for the boys for their life skills.
Mm-hmm.
Brilliant. George, thank you for being on the show.
No problem.
Yeah, Jose is my nephew. My little brother's son passed away. So Jose will see people like yourself as like a role model, a male role model. So for a young boy like I suppose you might have other boys like Jose that the dad is maybe passed, not around or whatever.
Yeah.
So you take I would assume, I've seen you take your role very, very serious. So some days, Saturday mornings in the rain, you're out there. Sunday mornings in the rain before church and breakfast, you're out there. And you got mothers, you got sons, dads out there shouting, and you control everything. So how do you deal with, because the young boy, he killed himself because he got released, yeah? How do you deal with these boys when they're maybe not good enough, or they don't turn up on time, or
in terms of like what, lateness and stuff like that?
Yeah, like the rejection, because some of them, they're expecting to play, and maybe they turn up late, so they're not playing, or they're not good enough, maybe, or they're arguing with each other. How do you deal with that?
So what I do with the younger ones, so use Jose for an example, with them being so young, is mainly the conversation you have with the parents. That's the main thing. So the parents can relay what happens. Because what I like to do is, if a child doesn't get selected for the Sunday squad for whatever reason, always like to have a conversation with the parent as to why. Because once again, it could be several different reasons. The child could have been messing around in the training session where I've warned them to stop messing around. But they could be, I don't know, it could be they just didn't perform on that week, or just they did perform, but there's other players that are playing better that week. There's so many things, but the main thing with the young players is always talking to the parents to relay the message. So you don't have kids just going back home thinking, oh, coach doesn't think I'm good enough. Coach doesn't like me. Coach doesn't this. Because I'm very, very frank with the boys, even at a young age. I get them together before every session, after the session, before they go to their parents, and I explain to them, all I want them to do is get better and better and better, and just don't stop. So I think it's all about the communication that you also have with the players, but also with the parents, because the parents have them at the majority of the week. It's not me. I just have them for one training session during the week, and that's it. But it's really the message that the parents are giving their child over and over again. And that's where I always start from.
Okay, so George, how do you think sports builds resilience? So for me, hearing about Jeremy, I was really intrigued on how has sports supported him to be resilient? Because in my eyes, when I watch my son, he's running after that ball. He doesn't stop. He carries on. The coaches are like, get up, get the ball, attack. If you lose the ball, you have to go back and get the ball. So it's kind of sport to me. I play netball. If you lose the ball, you've got to go back and get it. You've got to block it. You've got to chase it. You've got to pass it. So in all of my sporting activities, it teaches you how to be resilient.
Yeah.
So at what point does sport then literally it doesn't support resilience, and then it may turn negative? How, as a coach, would you identify that? How would you notice that, this particular child or this particular boy is not actually, he's not motivated, or he seems really deflated? How would you notice that? Because obviously, Jose hadn't played for a couple of weeks for other reasons. And I had a lot of the parents coming up to me saying, oh, how's he coping? My son, he didn't play and my son was really upset. My son started to cry. So how do you manage that? And how do you identify if a member of the team isn't responding to the rejection as well?
With me, once again, it depends on the age of the player. If the age of the player is young, the younger they are, the more interaction that you have with the parent. Because the parent is going to set the standards for that child.
But what about an older boy then, George? What about the older one?
For an older boy, you can just have frank conversations with them. Like literally. So for example, my under 12s have now gone into secondary school, and I'm now seeing their personality changes. I'm seeing their characters come out a bit more. I'm seeing that they've made that change from primary to secondary school. So there's certain things I wouldn't have been speaking about with them at under 11s, but under 12s now is actually less of the parents and more of them. So a lot of the times when, like say for instance, I'm very passionate about kids coming early. And the reason why I am is because when they come in, it might seem that they're messing around and stuff, but you get to walk around and have little conversations with them. Oh, how was your week? How was school? Were you behaving? Did you get a detention? This, that. You just have these little conversations with them, and by their answers, you can see if something's wrong. You can see if something's bothering them. So if they go into a session, they have a really bad session for whatever reason, or they're not giving effort, or they're looking like they're bothered, that's when you really go into it. You ask them, listen, you didn't have a great session today. Is there anything wrong? You want to talk to me about anything like that? So the older the player, you talk directly to the player, just little bits and pieces. But the younger the player, it's more of the parent that has more of the say. So I would really say it's primary school kids obviously are different to secondary school kids. Secondary school kids, obviously they're older and more mature. So I would be more direct speaking with them on certain issues if I saw there was a problem or anything like that.
Okay.
Can I ask a question? Yeah, George. You talked about building a relationship with the parents, and then about communication, good communication with the the younger they are, the more communication you have with the parents, yeah? And the older they are, you have straight conversation with the boys, yeah? I've known Jose is very, very attentive when he's around the football team and around you. He listens to the command, the instructions, doesn't really talk back, which is
he doesn't, no.
which is total opposite off the pitch. When he's with his friends, his family, and he's comfortable, he talks back, he's the life of the party. He's very robust, very hyper, you know. So how is it that you are able to do that? Because it's amazing to watch. Maybe we just leave Jose with you all the time.
I've got 2 kids of my own. I'm fine.
Listen, when God is giving you much as you're crying.
I'm good.
We need to bring all the Joses to your house.
I'm good with the 2.
Yeah. So I mean, how do you do that? I mean, obviously they love the football, they love the sport, but there must be something about you that is very attractive to them. You know what I'm saying? So they don't feel rejected, they feel accepted, they feel a part of, they feel wanted, they feel celebrated, they feel appreciated. How do you manage to do that with all the 11 players plus the mums and the dads? How do you keep that attention?
It's more of a I start with discipline first. Discipline's first and foremost. I don't care how good you are football wise. I don't care where you've been bad there, or you've been the best player on another team. If you come into our club and the environment, it's discipline first, no matter what age group it is. You've got to be disciplined. You have to understand the rules. You have to understand about being a team player. You have to understand about playing your part. But discipline starts first. And once I lay down the ground rules for the kids, I tend to see that kids, when you're really straight up with them and they understand there's no wiggle room, they understand what's going on. That's what I tend to find out. Once they feel there's a little gray area where they can step into, step back, step into, then they will do it. They will take advantage of it. But especially the younger ones, once I set a standard of discipline, they have to attend to it, then that's what it is. Because if they don't, I'll speak to their parent. And if their parent speaks to them and can't get through, well, they won't be playing at the club, because discipline is first. And once again, it's not just football, it's a life skill. So you might leave football, you still have that same discipline, and you will excel in another, field of life, another subject of life. So we try and teach those life skills through football. So that's how I keep the boys, or people might say in line and stuff, is discipline first.
That's really good, man. So communication, building good relationship, have straight talk, and as you just said, they're disciplined.
Yes, just being attentive to how they are, because certain players, obviously, every player has their own characteristics. So you might have players that are really loud. You might have players that are really quiet. You just have different sort of players. So you just got to see how they are every week that they come in. You might have a player that's really the life of the party in the team, and then one week they're just quiet. They're not saying anything at all. They're playing well, but they're not saying anything. So it's down to me as the coach to, ask those questions. Are you okay? Is everything going on? Like, why are you quiet today? You're not normally quiet. Did anything happen at school? And stuff like that. And then from the answers you get from the kids, you kind of know where to go through with it.
Yeah.
Are you getting any? Who helps you with your team, like financially? Is this something that you do out of love, or do you work? Is this a job?
Yeah, this is my full-time. It's been my full-time job since I left college. So I went to work in America, full-time coach. I learned my trade there, then came back here and started the club I'm started with now. So I do a lot of individual training, my team training. So it's a full-time job for me. So I have to understand every aspect of what goes into coaching. But for me,
what's your team called? What's your team called?
Parks Academy.
Parks Academy. So if some of these parents who are listening have got talented young people, they can reach out to you?
Yeah, they can. We got Instagram, we got Facebook, and those are the main 2 that we use. So Parks Academy, both Facebook and Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and are we all right to pass on your details if anybody is interested?
Yeah, of course. We're always open to that. So we're trying to get bigger and bigger as a club. So Yeah, we always.
I highly recommend Parks. Honestly, Jose goes there. He is the most respectful boy to George. Everything's, I don't want to get George upset, Mum. No, George, we can't listen to you on the sideline. No, but yeah. So literally, and also you have really taught him to be resilient. You know,
Yeah.
in training session, you know, it's like keep going, and then George will say to you, "You want to stop? It's okay if you want to stop, but
Yeah.
no, you stop. It's
Yeah.
not good." So these little things that you teach your children from a very young age
Yeah.
are really, really important, because we hope that they'll carry that through to their adulthood.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I've got a lot to be grateful for you and the Parks team for, George. So thank you.
Yeah, can I
Oh,
just,
definitely.
before we move on, it's important what you're doing, because young people, if they feel rejected when they're young, it's like what
Mm.
they put up a real shield when it comes
Yeah.
to relationships. They
Yeah.
don't trust. You know what I mean, they don't let their guard down, and then they build up anger issues. They build
Yeah.
up all kinds of issues. You understand what I'm saying to you?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I know that because I was one of them young people. You know what I'm saying? And I'm going to share later on a couple of things that happened to me as a young person. It'd be good, in the future shows if we can bring on some young people as well, just
Yeah.
to show how they got over being rejected. You know what I'm saying, rather than just accepting rejection and
Yeah.
allowing it to just destroy them. You know what I'm saying? How
Yeah.
they got.
Yeah.
And you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, even before I go, it's just a lot of teams always comment about how the boys are resilient when they're on the football pitch. Even certain scouts that come and watch the players. There was a scout that came to watch Jose's team on Sunday and whatnot. And before he left, that was one of the things that he commented on the boys, in terms of they hit the deck and they kind of just get up straight away. You know,
Yeah.
where the referee's, oh, he's on the floor. Yeah, he's on the floor, but just give him a chance to get up by himself. Let him learn that lesson there. You know, and then most of them do it. They just get straight back up and stuff like that. So it's a testament to the boys. They're learning what we're trying to teach them, and it's not always just about kicking the football. Because I know they might not know, because I don't want to crush their dreams, but through the numbers we know in professional football, a lot of these boys are not going to be professional footballers. But you don't tell them that. What you do, you just try and use it as a vehicle to help them in other parts of their life when they get older. So they become mentally strong. You know, they become resilient and understand that, these are the life skills I've learned from young. Even though it was football and then a different maybe arena or subject, it will stick with them for life. So yeah, that's what we try and do.
Thank you, George.
Thank you, George.
No problem.
Thanks. And moving on now to my cousin, Amy. This will be an interesting story. So I recently found out about my cousin via DNA ancestry. So I will pass you over to Amy, who will give you a bit of information on how we managed to find each other. Hi.
Hi.
Hi, Amy. Welcome to Struggle to Success. This week's topic, as you know, is resilience within rejection. So we've just had George talk about rejection in terms of a sporting arena.
Young people.
And now I want you to tell me a little bit more about rejection from a child, so being adopted at a very young age, and how you've had to be resilient in that situation. So tell me a little bit about yourself and your whole childhood leading up to meeting your biological family recently.
Okay, so where do I start?
Okay, I'll ask you some questions. So you are my uncle's child biologically, but we knew of you as a family, but you was adopted. What age was you adopted at?
Okay, so I was 18 months old when I was adopted, and yeah, so there's a lot of elements to this. I was a mixed race child. I was born in 1978, and taken into like a white family in a white affluent area, all that kind of stuff. But I remember at 18 months old, like literally being taken away. Do you know what I mean? So I always had like a yearning in my heart and a feeling that there was something missing in my life, because I'd look around and I was growing up in, an environment that was not hostile, but it wasn't friendly to me.
Mm-hmm. And do you think that was because, so you said to me that you always knew you was adopted, so it wasn't a situation where they sat you down at 16 and said, look, Amy, you're adopted. So they had always made you aware that you had been adopted, but equally you felt you didn't feel accepted within the family that had adopted you. And do you think that was because you were mixed race, or do you think that was because you just, they biologically weren't your family? What do you think that was, why you felt it wasn't a warm environment?
Right, okay, so I think when I was when I was growing up, basically as a child I was loved, accepted and taken on board, all that kind of stuff. But as I got older, and as teenagers do, they individuate and they separate from their parents. That would have happened anyway, whether it had been like a biological parent or whatever. But I think the rejection came when I asserted myself in the world, and I was kind of like, I don't need you. I don't need you. I don't need you. I'm going to establish who I am as a person. And I'm going to establish who I am, because also I didn't even know that I was I didn't know that I was mixed race. I didn't know who I was.
What would you do, Amy?
Kind of search where I came from, because my looks were very particular and everyone around me was white. And I was like, I don't know anything about my history, don't know anything about my upbringing, I don't know anything about my blood. I didn't even know if I was black or white. I thought that I came, this is going to sound crazy, but I literally thought that I came from like a Fijian tribe, like some sort of like tribe. And I was like kind of taken and put into England because I had no idea and no sense of self, because nobody said to me, this is your blood, this is who you are, and this is, you.
So Amy, would you say that as you got older and your features became more prominent, because you grew up in Canterbury, right?
No, I grew up in Maidstone in Kent.
In Maidstone in Kent. So you grew up in Kent. You were like,
very great area. It really is,
Yeah. So as you got older, your features became more apparent. Your social circles were predominantly white. So did you start to reject them on that basis?
No, you know what? As I suppose, especially when I went to secondary school, I started being more accepted and more loved and more part of the community. I've got to say that I feel that my friends and the friends that I loved and all that kind of stuff grew me up a little bit more than my parents did at that point. They kind of took over from my parents. So I started feeling rejected from my parents rather than from my social circle, because my social circle, they were just like, I don't know, they were loving, accepting and all that kind of stuff of me.
Amy, we've got two situations here. Your biological parents rejected you. Your adopted parents have subsequently rejected you as you've got older. And now you're feeling more accepted amongst your friends. Yeah.
And that was hugely important. You know, that was really, really important. I think what kind of got me through, I don't know, growing up and moving forward as a kind of like a teen and adult, all that kind of stuff in my life was my friendship circle, because I didn't have validation. Do you know what I mean? I think every validation of who they are. You know?
So is that where you felt that you built your resilience? Do you feel that you built your resilience based on the friendships that you had? Because speaking to you, you know, and when we first met, you were so brave to.
Come here 1 second. Look, sorry, this little boy is so nosy.
Hi.
You need to go to bed now. He until I got on here just to come down.
That's what they do. That's what they do. Yeah. So do you feel that?
I'm just gonna do it. So I'm just gonna go and play with it. Wait, no, go to bed. Go to bed. Go to bed. Sorry.
You can tell we're live. This is great.
It needs some resilience, like.
So what made you do the ancestry DNA? Like, didn't you think, God, if I get in contact with my biological family, I might be rejected again? Like, what made you? That in itself is showing resilience, because you wanted to meet your biological family. So what feelings were you feeling at that time when you did the ancestry DNA? What was you expecting?
Right, so I'm going to tell you exactly what happened there. So when I was 21 years old, I started crying out to my adoptive parents and saying, I don't have anyone around me who reflects me. Like, I don't know where I come from. I don't know who I am. And I started having like an internal kind of like struggle of, I feel like nothing. I didn't even feel like a human, you know. I felt alien. I felt like other. I felt nothing. And I was like, I don't want to feel this anymore. How can I deal with that? I don't know. I'll speak to my parents and tell them how I'm feeling. And they said to me, right, we've got a letter from your birth mother. And she said, if you ever wanted to, sorry, my dog is whimpering right now and I've got to let him out. Can you just give me 2 seconds?
I hear you.
Okay.
I can just imagine exactly. That must have been a real challenge, you know, being rejected by parents, and then having the issue with adoptive parents.
Right. Okay. So hang on. I've just had my dog play me up. The boys are playing T-way tennis all over me.
Right, Amy. Do you want to take some time out and sort him out, and we come back to you?
No. You need to go to bed right now.
Amy, we are live. We're live. So do you want to sort him out and then come back?
No, he just told me that he's going to go to bed.
Okay. So we'll try and do this quick. Does any of the hosts have any questions?
Yeah, I think you should finish what you were saying, because I felt that you were flowing and you were getting to a point. So I think you should continue what you were saying.
Can you remember? So you were saying that you got to 21 and you felt alien. You felt like you didn't know who you was. You felt like, So is that what kind of pushed you to do?
yeah, that was the catalyst. So I then turned to my adoptive parents and I just said to them, look, you know, do you have any information? Is there any way that you can kind of, I suppose, you know, make me feel like that I have connections or this, that, and the other? Like, who am I? You know, I've got to say, I remember when I was like probably a teen, early teens, maybe 13, and I used to sit because I had like a big mirrored wardrobe in front of my bed. And I used to sit in front of my mirrored wardrobe and I just used to be like, who am I? You know, why do I look this way and everyone else around me looks a different way? And I'd never, and I'm going to say, I'd never ever met another mixed race or black person in my life because we didn't have, you know, where I grew up, there weren't any black people at all, ever.
How old was you, Amy? How old?
I was 18 months old when I was adopted.
No. How old was you when you realized you didn't have no black people that looked like you in your family, in your surroundings? How old was you?
It became apparent, I think, in my teens.
How old? What?
In the teens, yeah.
My teens,
Can I ask you a question, Amy?
18 years
Wait.
old.
When you found the letter, or when you were told about the letter that your biological parents had written, what did you do then?
My parents, actually, my adopted parents, got in touch with the social services and the council that I was adopted from and said, look, my daughter has said that she wants to meet her parents or her mother or whoever. How are you going to facilitate this? And so, you know, it was like a yearning inside of me. And I was talking to Disha about this, like, well, maybe even today. I just said, like, you know, like, if you don't hear it in the whisper, you hear it in the shout. So where your resilience and your life purpose and all that kind of stuff comes from is because it's an internal urge and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And unless you act on it, you don't, nothing's going to happen. Nothing's going to move forward. You know, so it wasn't until last year. I mean, I had this Ancestry DNA kit for probably 2 years before I even did it, because I left it sat on the shelf and I was just like, okay, I'm not going to touch that. I'm not going to look at it. I'm not going to do anything with that because it's too big and too scary for me right now. You know, I've met my mum, I've met my sister, and this was all my maternal side, you know, and I was just like, wow. But then I didn't really even think that meeting my father's side and my dad's side was even a possibility, you know. I don't know if someone's never been in that situation, that if they can even like comprehend or understand or relate to that kind of thing. Like, but Disha was telling me when we first kind of like got in touch with each other, all that kind of stuff, she was like, I always knew about you and I always, you know, we had a picture of you when you were younger and we always knew that you were around. And that's where she was sort of saying like the rejection maybe kind of like maybe felt by me. No, it wasn't a rejection that I was feeling at all. I never felt rejected, but I felt a loss, like a grief, you know?
Can I ask, and once you'd made the connection with your biological family, what difference did that make in terms of how you felt?
Right, okay. So there's some things that people who have grown up with their own family take for granted. And I think they are family resemblances is a big thing, you know? So you, as someone who hasn't been adopted, who has grown up with your friends and family around you, you take family resemblances as a given. It's like, oh, that's my cousin, they've got my nose, or they got my eyes, or they got my this, or they got my that. Until this year, I'm going to be honest, I never had any of that at all. Don't even know how to explain it, but the elation that someone else in the world looks like you is the most exhilarating feeling.
Yeah, you and Disha look alike, for real.
Yeah. Do you know what, Amy? It's so, like, obviously you watch these things on TV, like, you know, family that you've never met before. And, you know, for me, I've always had boy cousins and I've never really had female cousins. So having you in like mine and the children's life now is just absolutely amazing. And I just really want to thank you for being resilient and for actually doing something about getting in touch with us, you know, because as a family, we did know about you, but we just didn't know where to start. And for you to actually take it upon yourself, and I did the DNA ancestry test as well. That's how we met. I'm grateful for your resilience in this situation, and I'm glad that you no longer feel rejected, and it's more of a loss and a grieving that you've missed out on family things. But yeah, thank you for
what I was going to say is that when you was talking about the environment of your family, you got to a place where the environment made you feel like you didn't fit in. It rejected you, the environment, and then you went into an environment with friends that accepted you, and that made you resilient. Yeah, that's interesting because I can relate to that. You know what I'm saying? But what happens, that resilience that I experienced when I felt rejected from my family environment was all negative resilience. So I became. It's interesting that it led you to seeking for your truth, your foundation, but it led me away from my foundation. It led me into pestilence and crosses, if you understand what I mean. It led me to the wilderness. So it's great that you were able to navigate your way back to your truth, your roots, your where you really came from. You know what I'm saying? That was great.
No, there's so much within this. I mean, I've had to accept things and learn things that I didn't want to learn. I've learned hard lessons, but it hasn't made me hard. And I don't think resilience, because I think sometimes people misconstrue resilience for hardness. Oh, well, you've built a brick wall around yourself, and so therefore everything is going to be okay because you're behind a barricade. No. You can't barricade yourself up. You still have to be loving. You still have to be kind. You still have to be accepting, resilient, and you still have to show your children how to grow and learn in the world, regardless of how your experience has been, because you cannot put your experience on a child. Do you know what I mean? You can't say, well, this is how it was for me, so this is how it's going to be for you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's a hard lesson to learn, and I think there are points and times that I thought maybe I would shut down, or I would become a victim, or I would like curl up in a ball and just be like, oh, leave me alone. And I was watching one of these shows about the wellness, and it was kind of like, well, how did you deal with that? Did you isolate yourself? Isolation is the primary response. It's kind of like a wounded animal. You kind of like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
make
you go into yourself, but sometimes you need to go into yourself to have healing, and it's a
Yeah.
bit like hibernation, you know.
Yeah,
When you hibernate. It's like a butterfly. You go into yourself to come back.
yeah, you go into yourself, hibernate, and people don't really want to pull someone out of hibernation. It takes very people around you to pull you out of hibernation. But the other thing is, you can do that for yourself, and that's the resilience. That's where that resilience comes from, because you know, every day that you push yourself forward and you push yourself through that barrier and you relinquish anybody else's opinion of you, and that's where I suppose this whole conversation is kind of like, you know, going further is are you attached to someone else's opinion of you? Because if you are, then you're screwed, basically.
Thank you, Amy.
Yeah, you have to navigate life.
And I think that is where, you know, resilience comes in, because life's going to give you a lot of knocks and blows, and it's how you manage that and how you come back from that. I think that's actually the meaning of resilience. It's like how you bounce back from something. But Amy, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Yeah, stay with us though, please.
We are going, and you know, talking about life, we have our very own life coach here this evening with us, called Louise. Hi. Welcome. We kind of handed over swiftly. Amy, if you put your mic on mute now, because we're going to speak with Louise for a bit. Great. Okay. Hi, Louise. Hello. Thank you, and welcome to Struggle to Success.
Thanks for having me.
Just give us a little bit about yourself. Tell us a little bit about who you are, what your role is as a life coach.
Okay, so I've been a youth worker first of all. So I'm a qualified youth worker, and I've been doing that for over 16 years. And that came about through me doing a parenting coaching session where I had to work with both young people and their parents. And I think the work that came out from that, even though the young people were getting a lot from it, it seemed like I had to work more with the parents. Mm-hmm. Because if the young person was doing the work and they went back home into their environment, they came back the same as they were before. So that's what helped me to think, well, you know what, I needed to start my own life coaching business. But how so that came about, looking at my own rejections, rewind a little bit, going back a little bit, for myself, how I got into this work. I mean, God first, that, you know, told me this with the work that I need to do is to help people. But how that came about was, personally for me, I was rejected from my mother as a child growing up. And
when you say rejected, what do you mean? Explain to us what you mean by rejected by your mother.
So basically, my mum has 4 children, so 4 of us, and all 4 of us have different fathers. Mm-hmm. So basically, I'm the eldest. So basically, I've had to live through each of their experiences. I don't know my own father. So the issue with that has been through my whole life, which is if that gets mentioned.
If what gets mentioned? Your dad?
My dad. There was a problem. Mm-hmm. So I kind of grew up wondering what was the problem, not knowing what the problem was. It was just something that nobody in the family, nobody can talk about it. Mm-hmm. But every so often, my nan might say, I've got a picture, but you can't tell your mom. I'm going to show you this picture. But when you're a child, you're just so excited about, oh my gosh, is this really who the person is, or whatever, not, you know, and which I did because I was so excited. I was probably about 6 years old when I saw the picture, and my mother had gone to my grandma's house to look for this picture. And I remember I lived with my nan a lot, and I remember coming home one time and we thought that she got burgled because my mother literally bust the door open, messed up the whole house looking for one picture. So I couldn't understand, why would she do something like that? What did he do that caused such a problem?
At that point, did you feel rejected by your dad?
No, her.
Okay, you felt more rejected by her.
Yeah, it wasn't because I didn't understand her actions towards me. So she was, my brothers were primary and I wasn't. So what was her actions? I couldn't understand her actions. So if, for example, I was a lot between this country and in Grenada, so I was back and forth a lot. But even when we went to Grenada, she would live with her boyfriend at the time and she would leave me at my aunt's. So I was by myself a lot, just wondering, why is this taking place? Why am I not allowed to be with her? And, you know, and why am I being left alone? And I just remembered one day, you know, my nan said to me, well, you know, this is your brother. This is your brother, but he was an older man. And I'm going to show you some of your brothers and sisters, but you can't say nothing. You know, it was a little,
God bless
bit
your
like,
grandma.
it was a little bit like that. So it was just, okay. And I think once my mother found out that I was looking for my brother, not even my dad, she called me to where she was. And literally, she beat me up.
How old is you?
I was 15 or 16. Yeah, 15 or 16. And literally, she beat me up. And I didn't understand why she beat me up. So I was like, well, what did this man do? Why is she dealing with me in this way? You know?
So at that point, did you start wanting to blame your dad, or was it still fingers pointed at your mum?
Because it was all her. Because I understood that this man just wasn't in my life. So I didn't really care about him at that moment. It was more about being accepted by her, you know, because she kept leaving me behind. But then when I started growing up, I started realizing, well, actually, no, she was doing it to all of us. But at least the others had their dads to go to. I didn't, you know. So I think the biggest moment for me maybe was when my nan introduced me to the rest of my brothers and sisters, and I had to keep it a secret by going and meet them, which made me feel a little bit more whole. It made me feel a little bit more whole, like to know that I've got other people who care about me. Even though I call more my grandmother my mother.
So do you feel that your mum was rejecting you because of the relationship that she had with your father?
Absolutely. But no one up to this day knows.
Have you ever met him?
No, because he died when I was about 17.
Oh, sorry to hear that.
Yeah, so I didn't get a chance to meet him.
So how has that situation brought you to where you are now with your life coaching? And has it made you resilient, or does it still have a real sore soft spot with you, with how she's treated you and maybe how she kind of prevented you from meeting your dad?
I think I grew up wanting to do better. I wanted more. So I couldn't see, I wasn't getting that support. I wasn't getting the support, thinking, you know, how do you do, you know, I didn't go to school, college and whatever not. So for me, it was, what do I do next? And a lot of the times she took me out of the house. So I wasn't really on the streets a lot as well. So for me, it was, what do I do? How do I get to where I need to be? And I wasn't sure how to do that until I met, you know, a mentor who was my manager, supervisor, and till today, he's still my mentor.
Wow.
You know,
so do you feel your mother's actions towards you made you be more resilient because you wanted to do better? You wanted to prove to her that actually I can be successful. I can be something despite what her opinion was of you?
There was too much negativity, so I just felt like there has to be more.
Yeah.
But I wasn't sure what that more was. So I just kind of went through life thinking, okay, how do I do better? And the opportunity just came where I think I was working in the courts at the time, and I had a back and forth with a lawyer. And I said to him, you know what, I'm going to prove you that I can do better. I'm not sure what that is yet, but I'm going to. And in all of that, I ended up going to university because I had the support of a teacher and my same mentor who was in youth work at the time. And they both supported me to skip all these GCSEs, A levels, and whatsoever, and go straight into university. You know, so I worked hard. Well, I had to work triple times harder than everybody else because I had no idea what writing an essay was all about. So I had to learn quick, you know, on the spot, and really push forward in doing that. And even then, when I completed it, my mother still said, you think you're better than everyone else that you've completed that. So I'm just like, well, you don't know the hard work that I put into doing that. You know, the lack of sleep, you know. And
so her
really
treatment towards you is what fueled you to get through your degree.
Absolutely.
It's what's fueled you through your career. And that's probably where your resilience is coming, because she's rejected you so much that you've actually responded with, I'm going to achieve and I'm going to be successful. And here you are today.
Absolutely. So that's how I got to where I am today, really. I mean, you know, the love of helping people is, you know, I think from that experience, I just want to help people build. And I think, as I said, working with that child and his mother, it reminded me of my own childhood. And I thought to myself, the adult needs more work than the child right now. And I just found that, and that's why I decided to do the life coaching, and it works. You know,
can you tell us a little bit more what life coaching involves and how it can help people? Because some of our viewers may want some life coaching. I don't really know much about life coaching, so it seems like a very vast.
It is. So there are different types of coaching. For me, I look at personal development, which is looking at yourself, looking at self-awareness, looking at you know, things that are going on in your life, identifying what that is, setting goals, setting targets, and, you know, really motivating you to, you know, to build on yourself.
So how would you deal with a client that came to you and said, you know, I've been rejected all my life, like I've been rejected in my friendship groups, I've been rejected by my family, I've been rejected by my partner. What steps would you take to rebuild that person?
Well, looking at that person's strengths and weaknesses first, and really identifying who they are as a person. Who are you? Because a lot of people cannot answer who they are as a person, how they behave, how they act, why they act like that. Even though coaching is not about looking in the past, that's counselling. Coaching is about looking forward.
Okay.
It's about looking forward, and, you know, how do you leave what's behind and move forward with your actions or goals or things that you want to work towards, and identifying what they are. What are they? You know, and people find it quite difficult to do. So it's amazing when they get to the other end and say, you know what, I've done this. I know who I am now.
Yeah. Hey, do you have any questions?
Yeah, you recently lost a brother. How do you handle the pain of the past and get to talk about that? You know, the listeners might have experience similar to what you have with, you know, the loss of your brother. Are you able in a place to speak about that?
I can talk a little bit, yeah.
What happened with that?
So my brother was murdered 2 years ago. It was very difficult. That was a very difficult situation because having to stab wounds and blood all over the place, and to really identify a body is a lot. But I think for me, when I was looking at that case, it was more about the young people and what caused them to do that to my brother. So I was more concerned about that. I was not angry with them. I wasn't angry with them because I come from the streets, so I know what it's like to be on the streets. So I know it's a new time, it's a new age, so they do things a little bit different from when I was on the streets. So my thoughts were, why are they doing the things that they're doing today? And I wanted to help them. I went to court and I was looking at them and I can see that they were lying, and they found that it was funny to be in court. They didn't really realize that this was their life that they were losing. So for me, I wanted to do more for them. I still do, because I'm going through the process at the moment of with restorative justice to try and meet them and talk to them, and so that when they leave from prison, that they don't leave feeling in a negative way, that they can come out and actually think, you know what, I did something that was wrong, but I can do something better with my life, because that's what I want for them.
Where did you get all that forgiveness from?
Love, understanding people and who they are, and accepting them for who they are. Everybody can go through something, but that doesn't mean that they can't change as well.
That's beautiful, man.
Can I ask, since you've gone through that process and your own personal development, how has that impacted on the relationship that you have with your mother now?
Worse.
What do you mean?
It's worse. Because that positivity that I have is a negativity to them. I say them, her and the people that surrounds her. They think it's a negative, me being a positive person. I should be on their bandwagon of, I should be angry and, throwing stones and whatever not. But for me, I went out, I went protesting, wanting to talk to young people, wanting to do more. But I understand, in conflict with myself, I was like, well, you know what, I'm for young people. That's what I do, so it would be wrong of me to want to put them down and hate every one of them on the street. There's no point. If anything, I want to help them.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. So would you say that the rejection that you felt, you've turned that into a positive?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And is there any way that you think you could use any tools to support the people that were actually rejecting you to develop them, i.e. your mum or her circle?
Well, I'm not meant to physically coach a member of my family. However, if I had to give them something, is especially my mother, maybe it would be to identify the root cause of that anger that she has regarding my father and how I relate to that.
Mm-hmm. And address that within herself.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Wow, it's powerful. I'm here thinking, because when you talked about your mum, it reminds me, I went through years of not talking to my dad, years and years. And it was because, looking back, we're good now. We in the lockdown, we had 10 weeks to share with each other. I actually interviewed him for 10 weeks about his life. Mm-hmm. And just listening to his journey, I was able to understand from his perspective why he dealt with situations why he dealt with things the way he did. Yeah. Because as a child, from my perspective, it felt like betrayal, it felt like abandonment, it felt like rejection. And so behind those feelings, because feelings, I've grown to understand that feelings are not good to make decisions on. You know what I'm saying? Because feelings come and feelings go, and it's based on your perception, and it's limited information because you're only seeing things from your position.
Absolutely.
So my position as a young person, I wanted to do my thing because we grew up in Jamaica. When I say we, me and my two siblings and my mum, come to find out he instigated that because he wanted a better education for his children. But finance was an issue, so he had to stay in England to make the money, send over to Jamaica. But by him being not present, I took on a role as the head of the house at 9-10 years old. You know what I'm saying? And when you take on the role as the head of the house at 10 years old, you're a child. You don't have no business taking on no role. But my resilience became like, I need to learn to drive at 10. I need to make money. I need to get money in the house so you take on roles and responsibilities at a young age that you have no business taking on. You know what I'm saying? Because you're not developed. You're a child. You understand? So, but what happened was, fast forwarded, we came back to England, and we had to live together back, reunited with my father. But I don't know him. I'm saying, because the time we've been in Jamaica, I don't know this man. So he's telling me now, I'm 12, 13. He's telling me I have to be in at 7 o'clock. And now, as a young Jamaican boy, who you talk to? You know what I'm saying? And he's, Caribbeans have a saying that 2 bull can't live in 1 pen. And the younger bull had to go. So what happened was, I went to a youth club, knocked on the door at 11 o'clock, and the door was locked. So there was no coming back in the house. But my resilience, wasn't a forgiving one. So it's aspiration. It's inspiring for me and a lot of our listeners to hear the forgiveness, because how I took my resilience is that, okay, I don't need to live here at 12, 13. I'm sleeping on the bus. So I slept on the bus for like whole a week. And then my cousin heard that I was sleeping on the bus. And at the time, and this is what I'm saying, how this society, at the time he had a relationship with an estate agent. And you could get a letter from the estate agent, go to the DSS, get 4 weeks rent in advance, and go and find a private accommodation. I found a house in Broadwater Farm at 14, 3-bedroom, and the DSS gave me the housing benefit, and then I've got a house. But the social services, they said, well, before we give you this, we have to contact your dad, because we have to contact your parents, because we have to try and see if we can restore this relationship. When they tried to call my dad said, well, he now listen to me, so he can't come back here. But by him saying that, it enabled me to get the house, which started a journey of making a lot of bad decisions and ended up in all kinds of madness, which added to the resilience of negativity. So it took years and years and years and years for me to 25 years actually to get back to a place, and a lot of loss. Even my brother had to die for us to get to a place where we can actually talk and forgive each other and understand each other and listen to each other. And then now we are all we have, you understand? So there is light at the end of the tunnel, you know what I'm saying? So I'm very happy that you came. I know it's a sensitive topic, and it's not something that we have to tippy-toe ourselves into these conversations. It's not something that we can just go into it confidently, because it's sensitive, and it's, I thank you for taking part, thank George for taking part, and Amy for taking part today. And it's been interesting, it's been inspirational, educational, and informative. And I don't know, Baz, if you want to come in and say anything apart.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting to see the differences and how things that happen in childhood affect you, and it can affect you for the rest of your life. And my probably from both of you, my experience was totally different because I grew up in a family with mum and dad and a lot of love. Yeah, so I come from a really loving background, and I actually thought that, you know, everybody was like that until you start going to school and then you start venturing out. And, you know, my rejection came from outside. So being called, you know, a black bastard. I remember the first time in probably, you know, 1970 or something, and somebody shouted out, "You black bastard, go back to where you come from." And I was saying, what are they talking about? What's that? I didn't even realize they were talking to me until it happened again. And then having experienced that type of rejection, it kind of gave me a level of understanding. So even though from within the home we were given confidence, or we were given belief and faith in our own abilities, and faith in God to know that, well, no matter what happens, you can overcome it. But then when I went through school, as you went through school, you realize that actually there are a lot of people that will reject you for no real reason. They'll just they don't understand, or they don't even know any better. But myself, I've always used it as a means and a way of motivating myself. So, you know, if you think that your rejection is gonna derail me, you know, you're wrong. And that's a sort of policy that I've had throughout my life. It's caused me to dig deep. It's caused me to focus. It's caused me to push myself. Just to prove that, you know, your rejection didn't work. I was successful regardless of whatever you try to do. And throughout my career, it's been the same thing. But, you know, I think that the foundation played a massive part in that. So starting off with that faith and that belief enabled me to be able to identify, you know, really that when I'm rejected, it speaks volumes about the person and less about me. And it's also made me mindful in terms of, you know, who I reject, because I guess it happens and it has to happen.
And how you reject someone as well.
Yeah.
Because it, you know, sometimes it's, I remember when we used to go out clubbing, and you know, and the boys used so boys used to come up to you,
don't feel guilty,
and then some girls would really, you know, run them, and then some girls would let them down gently. And it's you know, there's a manner in how you reject somebody or a proposition. Me, it depends on how I'm approached by someone. So depending on the person's approach or depending on the situation, you know, we always get told do it in a sandwich. So you kind of give the bad, the good, and then a bit in the middle. So, you know, it's just, I feel that you reject somebody as nicely as you possibly can to ensure that their feelings aren't hurt, and also to allow them to be able to go and not feel like they'll never want to maybe chat up a girl again, or they never want to apply for another job.
It is part of life, yeah. But I think from my perspective, as long as you let that person that you're rejecting know that it really isn't about you, it's not that you've done anything wrong. It's more or less my choice, my right to reject you, as is your right to reject me, as is, you know, that's just your God-given right. Doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you, because one man's trash is another man's treasure, and vice versa. So, you know, it's just part of life. But
and the more rejections you get, the more resilient you become.
The more resilient you are, if you harness that.
I find that sometimes it's the men that you would never think would come and talk to you. They don't care. In Jamaica, they don't business. They see you walking down the street.
Jamaican men are very resilient.
Exactly.
Exactly. No, 1,000 times.
They'll still keep coming back. So on that note,
Yes.
I think we've had a great evening,
Yes.
and we do hope that the viewers have got something out of the show. You know, our show is here to inspire people by everyday people's stories, and we hope that, you know, with any rejections that you guys have experienced or are receiving, that, you know, you maintain your resilience.
Yeah, and turn it into a positive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Good evening. Good night.
And good night.
Yeah. See you next week.